Cuba has distinguished itself on the world stage by becoming the biggest single provider of healthcare workers to the Ebola crisis in West Africa. According to the World Health Organization, the relatively small Caribbean country has contributed more than the Red Cross or richer nations. Cuba's large-scale deployment of medical staff to fight the devastating West African Ebola epidemic continued last week, with 91 Cuban doctors and nurses arriving in Liberia and Guinea. Cuba has already deployed 165 medical workers to Sierra Leone, bringing its total presence in the three countries to 256. Some 15,000 volunteers from Cuba are said to have signed up for duty to fight Ebola. Cuba's response to the Ebola epidemic has won praise from humanitarian workers globally who say the international community's reaction has been lacking. The Ebola virus has already killed about 5,000 people, mostly in Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia. Meanwhile, NewsAmericasNow.com has reported that one Cuban doctor on the forefront of the Ebola battle has died of malaria. A SWAT team is being considered in order to respond swiftly to any suspected case of Ebola in the Organization of the Eastern Caribbean State OECS region should the need arise. This was one of the proactive approaches outlined by the OECS Commission as the Director General Dr. Didicus Jules addressed a joint sitting of St. Lucia's Parliament on Thursday, October 23rd. The urgent event was the first address by the OECS Commission to any joint meeting of Parliament in the region in recent memory. The joint meeting of St. Lucia's Parliament heard from the OECS Commission on the region's position regarding the threatening Ebola virus. This follows talks with health officials at the inaugural OECS Council of Ministers of Health meeting, which took place recently in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and a special Cuba summit meeting of members of the regional organization, ALBA. Cayman Islands government is getting ready to announce who will design and engineer the expansion to the Owen Roberts International Airport. Cayman Islands Tourism Councillor Joey Hughes says that contract should be awarded in a couple of weeks. Cayman News 27 Tammy Solomon reports.
Tourism Councillor Joey Hughes believes redeveloping the Owen Roberts International Airport is taking off.
We're expecting the Central Tenders Committee to make an announcement on that very shortly.
In as soon as 2 weeks, the CTC will decide who will design and build the expansion of the existing airport. In the meantime, temporary structures are in place to deal with visitors to these islands.
We're on track for the major renovations, and we feel very confident that we will see that in the first part of next year.
That's critical as the winter season is around the corner, meaning visitor numbers will likely climb. But how will the expansion be funded?
Through the airport development tax has enough funding to get us through, and we've come up with a brilliant business case on this, where as we continue on over the next 5 years and then further 5 and then 10 and 15 years into it, this fund will continue to fund it.
To the tune of some $25 million when all is said and done.
This is self-funding and won't cost the Cayman Islands government anymore.
And in the meantime, Mr. Hughes says government will do everything it can to make the best first and last impression to those who fly in to visit.
Guyana said it has exported 400,000 tons of rice, the most in the country's history. Last year, Guyana exported 395,000 tons, with more than 50% going to Venezuela, with other significant buyers being Europe, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, and other Caribbean countries. Guyana and Panama signed a rice deal in September, resulting in Guyana exporting 50,000 tons of rice to the Spanish-speaking country. Guyana's Agriculture Minister Dr. Leslie Ramsamy said new contracts for rice export are also on stream, but even with those Guyana already signed, it is on pace to surpass 500,000 tons. Ramsamy assured that Guyana, even after all exports, the country will still have rice for its citizens. Meanwhile, there has also been an increase in sugar production, with Ramsamy saying production has now surpassed 170,000 tons for the year, and it is expected to exceed last year's total of 186,500 tons. In 2013, sugar exports accounted for 8.3% of Guyana's total exports, valued at $112.2 million, contributing to 3.9% of Guyana's gross domestic product. And St. Vincent and the Grenadines Prime Minister Dr. Rolf Gonzalez proposed that a 3-member CARICOM panel help resolve the ongoing contract dispute between West Indies players, their union WIPA, and the West Indies Cricket Board. In a letter to the West Indies Cricket Board President Dave Cameron last week, Gonzalez said the current crisis was too serious a matter to be resolved by the board alone and suggested the wider engagement of CARICOM. Gonzalez proposed the panel be comprised of current CARICOM Chairman Antigua's Prime Minister Gaston Brown, Grenada's Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell, and former Jamaican Prime Minister P.J. Patterson. The crisis erupted 2 weeks ago when the West Indies one-day team abruptly walked off the tour of India in protest over the terms and conditions of the newly signed collective bargaining agreement that the WIPA struck with the West Indies Cricket Board. In response, the Board of Control for Cricket in India says it will initiate legal proceedings against the West Indies Cricket Board and has also decided to suspend all bilateral tours to West Indies. According to Gonzalez, the CARICOM group is well placed to assist not only with the cricketing authority in India, but possibly with the Indian government. The West Indies Cricket Board announced last week it would set up a task force to investigate the matter. And coming up next on JTV News, the Virgin Islands Transportation Alliance launches as Minister Vanterpool announces that the BVI is expecting 600,000 cruise visitors this season. FSN officials say domestic violence is a public health concern and a community problem, and the legendary and very funny entertaining performance by Black Ice at Microphone Messengers.